How's everybody doing? A guten Erev Shabbos and a guten Erev Sukkos. It's great to be learning with you on a Friday as we wait to go into Shabbos and Sukkos. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Friday? Yom Shishi. Yehudit in South Carolina, wishing everybody a restful and rejuvenating Shabbos and Chag Sukkot HaSameach. John in Maine, Melissa in Great Neck, Paul in the Great Northwest, Bill in Mid-Missouri, Sharon at the doctor's office for regular follow-up, praying for 6 years cancer-free. Amen. May you hear only good news. Sharon, we all say amen to that. Renee is in the house, wishing everyone good Shabbos. Guy in Ohio, Ryan in Florida, Paul in Minnesota. Karen in Northern California, Tom in PA, Lynn in Maryland. Welcome, everybody. We're continuing our discussion of Mishna number 2 here in chapter 2 of Tractate Kiddushin, the 20th volume of the Talmud. We are on page 47, Mem Zion. We actually pick it up at the very, very bottom, just the last 2 words of page 46b. And we're talking about, so if you're going to create betrothal with an exchange of money or something that is worth money, okay, so there's a minimum value, 1 peruta. And in the Mishna, it talked about if this weird situation, really hypothetical, testing our understanding of the law, that he's saying, the man is saying to the woman, be betrothed to me, let's say with these 3 dates, right? 3 dates, and the 3 dates together are worth 1 peruta, which is the minimum value, very small value, like a penny. But each date by itself is worth less than a peruta. So he can't say to her, be betrothed to me with this date. That would not work, less than the minimum value. If he says, be betrothed to me with these 3 dates, and the 3 together are worth 1 peruta, that would work. But what if the way he says this is a little bit ambiguous, so he creates some uncertainty? Did the betrothal happen? If he says, be betrothed to me with this date, and be betrothed to me with this date, and be betrothed to me with this date. Well, he made each statement on 1 date, and each date is worth less than 1 peruta. So the Mishnah said, no betrothal. But he says, be betrothed to me with this one, and this one. Well, that sounds like be betrothed to me with these 3. So then there would be a betrothal, but it's a little bit of room for doubt. So these are the kinds of questions we're examining. So Rava said that the Mishnah taught that if she ate the dates 1 by 1, so he says, be betrothed to me with this one and this one and this one, so it sounds like the 3 of them together are what he's saying, but as she receives each one, she eats it. Why does that create a problem? Let's keep reading. Rava said, the Mishnah taught that if she ate the dates 1 by 1, their value is not added together, only if he said to her that she is betrothed with this one and with this one and with this one, which would indicate that she is not betrothed until she has received them all. But if he said to her that he is betrothing her with these, meaning with all of them together, okay, then even if she is eating them 1 by 1, she is also betrothed if their combined value is 1 peruta. But if he said with this and this and this, and each time she eats 1, so why is that a problem? Because it's being lent to her until the whole thing is finished, right? Because we said that if he says, be betrothed to me with 5,000 dinars, and he can't pay it all at once, then what he pays her along the way, it's like he's loaning it to her until the entire betrothal payment is made. Then they're betrothed and it becomes all of hers. And it's considered a loan because if he backs out before it's done, then there will be no betrothal. And the problem is if she consumes what has been lent to her, which is really just provisional until she receives all of them, by consuming it, that messes up the procedure, as it were. But if he has already said, be betrothed to me with all of these, then even though he's handing them over one at a time, it's like she's receiving all of them, so it doesn't matter if she eats them along the way. Now, the reason is that when she eats her own food, right? Because he said, be betrothed to me with all of these. Okay, so even though he's handing them over one at a time, he's saying, be betrothed to me with all of these. He's giving her all of them. So even as she receives them, she can eat them because they're hers. Whereas if he says, be betrothed to me with this one and this one and this one, then that seems like it's 3 payments, and she should only be sort of guarding them until the whole payment is made and the betrothal is complete. Then they all become hers and she can do whatever she wants with them. But she can't do that along the way. Now the Gemara comments, it is taught in a Baraisa in accordance with the opinion of Rava. If one said to a woman, be betrothed to me with the fruit of an oak tree, so I guess that would be an acorn, with a pomegranate and with a nut. So, right, we're getting very weird, right? Testing the law with weird hypotheticals. So he says to her, be betrothed to me with an acorn, a pomegranate, and a nut. But he actually says, be betrothed to me with an acorn, with a pomegranate, and with a nut. Or if he said to her, be betrothed to me with these, right? Meaning all 3 of these. So then, if combined they are worth 1 peruta, she is betrothed. But if not, right, if the value of each individual one of these items is not worth 1 peruta, then she is not betrothed. Excuse me. If he said to her, be betrothed to me with this one, and with this one, and with this one, so if combined they are worth 1 peruta, she is betrothed. But if not, she is not betrothed. If he said to her, be betrothed to me with this one, and she took it and ate it. With this one, and she took it and ate it. And also with this one, and also with this one, she is not betrothed unless one of them by itself is worth a peruta because she consumed them as they came in. Excuse me. Okay. And this concludes our Baraisa. So, the Gemara proceeds to prove Rava's ruling from this Baraisa. What are the circumstances in this first case where he said with the acorn, with a pomegranate, and with a nut? So if we say that he said to her either with an acorn or with a pomegranate or with a nut, why is the law that if their combined worth is 1 peruta, then she is betrothed? But didn't he say or, right? He said to her, be betrothed to me with an acorn or a pomegranate or a nut. So that's why one of those has to, at least one of those has to have a value on its own of the minimum value of 1 peruta, and if not betrothed, right? So if he said to her, so we're trying to understand the case. So if we say that he said to her, either with the acorn or with the pomegranate or with the nut, why is the law that if combined they are worth 1 peruta, she is betrothed? But didn't he use the conjunction or, which indicates that she is betrothed with only one of them, and that one item should need to be worth 1 peruta? So rather, if we say that he said to her with an acorn and with a pomegranate and with a nut together, that is the same as saying with this one and with this one and with this one. The law is stated in the subsequent clause of the Baraisa, but that law is stated in the subsequent clause of the Baraisa, and so it would be redundant. So rather, is it not referring to a case where he said to her, be betrothed to me with these? But from the fact that the latter clause of the Baraisa teaches, or if he said to her, be betrothed to me with these. So it may be inferred that in the first clause, we are not dealing with a situation where he said, be betrothed to me with these. So what exactly did he say in the first clause? And the Gemara continues with the explication of the Baraisa. Rather, it is to be understood as an initial general statement, which the Tana of the Baraisa is explaining, like this. If one says to a woman, be betrothed to me with an acorn, with a pomegranate, with a nut, and now the Baraisa pauses and explains the circumstances of the case. How so? For example, when he gave her these 3 items and he said to her, be betrothed to me with these. And so the Gemara continues its proof. And the latter clause of the Baraisa teaches a different possibility. If he said to her that she is betrothed with this one and she took it and ate it, then if one of them is worth one peruta, she is betrothed, and if not, she is not betrothed. While in contrast to this, in the first clause of the Baraisa, the Tana does not distinguish between a woman who is eating the items and one who is placing them in her possession. In either case, she is betrothed. And you can conclude from the Baraisa that any case where he said to her, with these, if they are worth one peruta combined, then when she is eating them, she is eating of her own food. It is not considered a loan because he's giving it to her piecemeal, and it's a loan until he completes the transaction, and then they are betrothed. Then the Gemara conclude from the Baraisa that Rava's statement is correct. Now the Gemara asks, this works out well according to the one, i.e. Rabbi Ami, who says that the case of the woman eating the dates one by one is referring to the latter clause of the Mishnah, where he said, be betrothed to me with this and with that. And he explained, what is the meaning of she is not betrothed unless one of these items is worth one peruta? It means unless the last one is worth one peruta. And so too, the Baraisa can be explained unless the last one is worth one peruta. But according to Rav and Shmuel, who both say that the case of the woman eating the dates one by one is referring to the first clause of the Mishnah, how would they explain the statement of the Baraisa? In the first clause of the Mishnah, one said, be betrothed to me with this, be betrothed to me with that. And if one of them is worth one peruta, then there is betrothal, and otherwise, no. Combined value doesn't help. And Rav and Shmuel explained that it was necessary for the Tana to mention the case of a woman who is eating the items one by one to teach that despite her immediate benefit, one of the dates must be worth one peruta for her to be betrothed. And the phrase, unless one of them is worth one peruta, that phrase indicates that one alone must be worth one peruta. But here in the Baraisa, the Baraisa lists only groupings. It does not list individual items. The Baraisa states a case where he said to her, be betrothed to me. He said that only once, followed by a statement that the three items should serve as the betrothal money. Why then does one of them need to be worth a peruta? Why not rely on the combined value? And the Gemara answers, in accordance with whose opinion is this law of the Baraisa taught? It is that of Rebbe. Now, right, because everything seems to be depending on whether we mean or and, basically, right? And when we don't specify, do we mean or do we mean and? When we say with this, does that mean and? Does it mean or? So to help us understand that, we're going to look at a different ruling of Rebbe in a whole other area of the law, which is called pigul. So pigul and nosar are often spoken about together, and they are sort of mental deficiencies, not intentional deficiencies, that will render an offer invalid, right? So pigul is by intention. Pigul means that at the time when the temple is standing and you bring an offering, let's say a sin offering, to a priest, and the priest is going to, slaughter that offering for you, and he's going to bring, some of its blood sprinkled on the altar, and some of the parts of the animal are going to be consumed on the altar, and some of it is going to be consumed by the priests themselves, right? So if at the time that the priest initiates this process, he made a mistake, and he has in mind this is the part that's the edible part of the sin offering, edible by priests. He's going to save that and eat it, and he can only eat it until tomorrow, but he thinks to himself, I'm going to eat it in 2 days. Now that's eating beyond the boundaries of what's permissible, and if he has that intent even at the outset, that's going to render the whole offering disqualified. Okay, so that's what pigul is. So let's see what are we going to learn about pigul that's going to be relevant to what we're doing here of this guy who's betrothing this woman in a very funny way, where he's giving her these very low value items one at a time or in a grouping. Okay, so it is said, so the Gemara answers, this ruling in our Mishnah is in accordance with the law, In accordance with whose opinion is the law of our Baraisa that we were just discussing? It is that of Rebbe, who says, with regard to the laws of pigul, which is an offering that was sacrificed with the intent to consume at least an olive bulk, right, the minimum amount, small olive bulk of it, after its appointed time has passed, or outside the boundaries of where it must be consumed, like meaning in the temple by the priests. Now, there is no difference whether if the priest says that he intends to consume an olive bulk of this offering after its time has passed, an olive bulk outside of its boundaries, i.e. without employing the word and, or whether he said that he intends to consume an olive bulk after its time and an olive bulk outside of its boundaries. Right? In other words, if these are two things that can create pigul, that he intends to eat some of it after its time has passed, or that he intends to eat some of it outside of the Temple Mount, right? So either way, that's going to render it pigul. And it doesn't matter if he says to himself, oh, I'm going to eat an olive bulk in 2 days, and I'm going to eat an olive bulk outside the Temple Mount, or he says to himself, I'm going to eat an olive bulk after its time, or I'm going to eat an olive bulk outside the Temple Mount. Either way, it's going to be disqualified, right? There is no difference whether he says that he intends to consume, beyond its time and outside the Temple Mount, or beyond its time or outside the Temple Mount. Either way, disqualified. And both expressions, why? Because both expressions are actually considered individual statements, since he is treating each statement separately. Because you might have thought that if he says, I intend to eat, outside, to eat after its time and outside the Temple Mount, and then that actually becomes very unlikely. So maybe the fact that he stated both means that we're going to, find some way to unpigul it. But no. Either way, it's going to disqualify the offering. Right? Both expressions are considered individual statements, since he is treating each statement separately, and in neither case does he intend to combine the two amounts. So according to Rebbe, when one says with this and with this, each statement is distinct. Consequently, although she derives immediate benefit by eating the dates that she receives, she is betrothed only if one of them is worth a peruta on its own. Let's just leave that one alone. Rav says, with regard to one who betroths a woman with a loan, she is not betrothed. All right, so getting to a whole new area now. Our Mishna also mentioned the loan. We got into loans, even though we were talking about giving the dates one at a time, because we said that if he says to her, be betrothed, right, with all of these, once meaning that he intends to give her 3 dates. So when he gives her the first one, she's not betrothed yet, and if she eats it, then she's consuming something that was lent to her really for safekeeping, right? And she should have waited until she received all the dates, then they would be betrothed, and then they would be her dates to eat. And so we by analogy said, in a more typical case, well, if it's a big amount of money that he needs to pay in order to betroth her, and he's paying her, like 1,000 dinars this week and another 1,000 dinars next week, that until she receives all of it, what she has received is a loan, because he could change his mind and back out of the betrothal, then she would have to give back the money. That's why it's considered a loan. Okay, so now that we're talking about loans and betrothal, Rav says, with regard to one who betroths a woman with a loan, she is not betrothed, since a loan is given to be spent. So you might have thought that he could say to her, she says to him, can I borrow $100? Okay, he gives her $100. And then now she's holding the $100. And now he says to her, you know what? Keep the $100 and become my wife. Be betrothed to me with the $100 that I lent to you, but now you don't have to pay it back. So he's giving her the value of $100 in the sense that he's forgiving the loan. But this does not work, because at the time that he handed her the $100, it was not for the purpose of betrothal. It was a loan. And the law is forgiveness of a loan does not constitute giving something of value for the purpose of betrothal. Even though you are giving something of value when you forgive a loan, it doesn't work for creating betrothal. Right? So again, Rav says, with regard to one who betroths a woman with a loan, she is not betrothed, since a loan is given to be spent. Consequently, from the moment the money is lent, it no longer belongs to the lender, and he cannot betroth a woman with it. Even though there's forgiveness of the loan, he's not giving her money or an item worth money. He's not handing her something to create betrothal, and that's why it doesn't work. And the Gemara suggests, okay, let us say that this is subject to a dispute between the Tanaim, the sages of the Mishnah, as it was taught in a Baraisa, right? Baraisas are contemporaneous with Mishnah, slightly less authoritative. With regard to one who betroths a woman with a loan, she is not betrothed. That's what we're learning. That's what Rav says. But some say she is betrothed. And what? Is it not that they disagree with regard to this? One sage holds that a loan is given to be spent, and one sage holds that a loan is not given to be spent. And the Gemara questions this suggestion, and how can you understand it that way? Say the latter clause of the same Baraisa, and they agree with regard to the case of a sale that he acquires it. Although they disagree as to whether one can betroth a woman with a loan that he has given her, they agree that a lender can purchase an item from the debtor in exchange for forgiving the money that he has lent him. I mean, you can use forgiveness of a loan, let's say, to acquire an item from the debtor. I lend you $100, you have to pay me $100 back. But then I say to you, you know what? This pen that you have, this fancy fountain pen, I really like it. Let me take the pen, and you don't have to pay me back the $100. That's a valid transaction. Why does it not work in the case of betrothal? Because betrothal has its own requirements, right? So that does work in the case of just a creditor and a borrower, right? So if you say that a loan is given to be spent, with what has he acquired it? There is no money with which to effect an acquisition. No proof can be derived from this baraisa, which cannot be understood as stated. Right? We're not going to be able to learn from the fact that you can use forgiveness of a loan in some other kind of transaction with respect to betrothal. Rav Nachman says our colleague Rav Huna interprets the Baraisa as referring to other matters and not as referring to a straightforward case of a loan. And with what are we dealing here? A case where he said to her, "Be betrothed to me with 100 dinars." And it was found to be 100 dinars less 1 dinar. In other words, he said, "Be betrothed to me with 100 dinars. And then he handed her 99 dinars. Now, she didn't realize at the time that they made the transfer. He thought he was giving 100. She thought she was receiving 100. And she accepted betrothal. Boom, they're betrothed. Everything is great. But then when they count the money, it turns out that he only gave her 99. So what happened? Do we say there's no betrothal? Or do we say that there is a betrothal and the shortfall, that 1 dinar shortfall, that she is lending it to him? He still owes her 1 dinar, right? And so it's like she's accepting the betrothal even though there's 1 dinar short of the full 100 that he said, "I betroth you with this 100." And it's like she's lending him that missing dinar and he has to pay it back later. So what are we dealing with here? A case where he said to her, "Be betrothed to me with 100 dinars," and it was found to be 99 dinars. So the missing dinar is considered to be a loan that he has taken from her. Now, one sage who said that the woman is not betrothed holds that the matter is embarrassing for her, preventing her from claiming the final dinar from him. And therefore, he has failed to fulfill his statement and she is not betrothed. Since she won't ask for the missing dinar, then he never gave what he promised, and we have to rule as a matter of law that there is no betrothal here. But the other sage, who said that she is betrothed, he holds that the matter is not embarrassing for her and is not preventing her from claiming the final dinar. He is therefore considered to have fulfilled his statement and borrowed 1 dinar from her, which he will repay in due course, but she is nevertheless betrothed, right? So the sages seem to be one who says you can be betrothed with a loan, and the one who says you can't. Maybe what they're disagreeing about is this case where the guy was short 1 dinar and it's like she's lending it to him. One sage says, no, we can't say that because she'll never ask for it because it's embarrassing to her. And the other sage says, what are you talking about? When she figures out that she only received 99, she'll say to him, hey, you owe me 1 more, and he'll pay it. So the betrothal is good. Now the Gemara asks, but rather, with regard to that which Rabbi Elazar says, if one said to a woman, be betrothed to me with 100 dinars, and he gave her 1 dinar, she is betrothed, and he must later finish giving the full sum. So let us say that his statement is parallel to a dispute between Tanaim. The sages say to distinguish between the cases where he gave her 100 dinars minus 1, 99 dinars, right? The matter is embarrassing for her, preventing her from claiming the final dinar from him since he has given almost the entire sum. But if he gave her 100 dinars less 99, right? He says, I'm going to give you 100 and he only gave her 1. Well, the matter is not embarrassing for her in terms of asking for the rest of the money. And it's not preventing her from claiming the rest of the dinars. Therefore, all would agree that she is betrothed in the latter case. I mean, isn't that funny? If he says, I'm going to give you 100. Here's 1. And she takes the 1. So then it seems that everyone would agree that when she takes the 1, it's an understanding between them that she's accepting the betrothal, and he now owes her 99 to complete the deal, but they're going to be betrothed from this moment. If he never pays, then I think it would be retroactively realized that they were never betrothed because he never paid. And so it would be never betrothed, the betrothal never took effect. Whereas they're saying that if he says, be betrothed to me with 100 dinars, and he gives her 99, then at least according to one of the sages, since she's never going to say, you know what, you were short 1, give me the missing 1. She'd rather just let it go and not make an issue out of that. But because that might be her psychology, actually no betrothal was ever created because they never reached an understanding where the full 100 was going to be paid. The Gemara raises an objection to the statement of Rav from a Baraisa. In the case of one who says to a woman, be betrothed to me with the deposit that I have in your possession. All right? He already deposited money in her possession. He didn't lend it to her. He said, you know what, there's some guys that are after me and they're going to, take any money that I have on me. So here's all the money I have. It's $100. Hold on to this for me. Keep it safe, right? He goes about his business. He comes back, and then he says, that 100 that you're watching for me, be betrothed to me with it. Now, does that work? We already saw that when he lent her 100 and now says to her, you don't have to pay me back, be betrothed to me with that. That doesn't work. What about a deposit? In terms of mechanics, it's the same. He gave her $100 earlier, and now he's saying, be betrothed to me with that. But the difference is it wasn't a loan. She was doing him a favor, right? When he lends her money, he's doing her a favor. When he says, watch this money for me, she's doing him a favor. And perhaps more importantly, the money never left his possession. She's watching it for him, but he remains the owner of the money. In the case of one who says to a woman, be betrothed to me with the deposit that I have in your possession, and she went and found that the deposit had been stolen or that it had been lost. Well, if at least the value of 1 peruta remains, she is betrothed with that amount. Okay, so now what we're seeing is if he just says to her, that money that I deposited with you, be betrothed to me with it. So you can do that. Even if the money's lost, you can do that so long as at least 1 peruta of that money remains. So you know that you can turn a deposit into betrothal money. And even if some of it was lost, as long as there's a minimum value, the 1 peruta, it's going to work. Now, if what they're going to now say is That's if she didn't know how much money there was. But if he says, I'm depositing $100 with you, and she says, okay, I'll watch it for you. And then later he comes and says, be betrothed to me with the deposit, right? So now they both know that it's $100 that he deposited with her. If some of that money is missing, they can't turn it into, she doesn't become betrothed if his language was, be betrothed to me with the deposit, right? Now they're going to say that. But if he said to her that he is betrothing her with a loan that he... Wait a minute. Whoa. Let's just get this whole... this is a baraisa, different baraisa than what we've been learning. In the case of one who says to a woman, be betrothed to me with the deposit that I have in your possession, and she went and found that the deposit had been stolen or that it had been lost, if the value of one peruta of it at least remains, she is betrothed with that amount. And if not, she is not betrothed, right? If not even one peruta remains, and there's nothing to be betrothed with. But the fact that turning a deposit into betrothal money, that does work. But if he said to her that he is betrothing her with a loan that he had given her, she is betrothed, even though the value of one peruta of it does not remain. This seems to be the opposite of what we learned earlier, but we said that one of the sages allows betrothal with a loan. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, in the name of Rabbi Meir, a loan is like a deposit. So this must be the sage who allows betrothal with a loan. Why does he allow that? Because according to at least one opinion, a loan is like a deposit. Let's see how. We're on 47b. The Gemara analyzes this. They disagree only with regard to the following. There is one sage who holds that one can betroth a woman with a loan, even though the value of one peruta of it does not even remain. And another sage holds that if the value of one peruta remains from it, yes, he can betroth her with it, but if the value of one peruta does not remain of it, he cannot betroth her with it. But everyone agrees that if one betroths a woman with a loan, she is betrothed, and this presents a difficulty for Rav, who stated that one cannot betroth a woman with a loan. So Rava said to him, and how can you understand it this way? Is this baraisa fully explainable? It is corrupted, and it cannot be cited as a proof. And he explains why the baraisa must be corrupted. Something happened in the chain of transmission, and the baraisa is self-contradictory. It doesn't make sense, and Rava will explain why. What are the circumstances of this deposit that is discussed in the baraisa? If she assumed financial responsibility to repay the owner for it if it is stolen or lost. Okay, so now when you deposit money with someone else, who's doing who a favor? If you're saying to them, please watch this for me, or even I'll pay you to watch it for me. Please watch this for me. Okay, I'll watch it for you. She's doing him a favor. She's not assuming, is she assuming responsibility? That's more like if he says, I'll pay you to watch it for me. Now, if she loses part of that money, well, she was being paid to watch it. She failed at that task, so she's going to have to replace what was lost. All right? So if she assumed financial responsibility to repay the owner for the deposit if it is stolen or lost, then it is the same as a loan. As even if it is entirely lost, she must still repay its value. On the other hand, if she did not assume financial responsibility for the deposit, well then, if so, rather than teaching in the latter clause of the baraisa, but if he betroths her with a loan that he has given her, she is betrothed despite the fact that the value of one peruta does not remain, well then let him distinguish and teach the distinction within the case itself. It should have been taught like this. In what case is that statement said that she is not betrothed if less than the value of one peruta remains from the deposit? If she did not assume financial responsibility upon herself for it. But if she did assume responsibility for it, then even though the value of one peruta did not remain, she would be betrothed. Rather, since the wording of the baraisa cannot remain as it is, answer this way. But if he betroths her with a loan that he had given her, she is not betrothed, despite the fact that the value of one peruta of it remains. And the baraisa stated that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Meir, a loan is like a deposit. And the Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do they disagree? And Rabbah said, I found the scholars in the study hall of Rav who were sitting and saying, they disagree with regard to the issue of whether a loan the debtor had not yet begun to spend is in the possession of the owner with regard to the possibility of retraction of the loan by the lender. And the same is true, i.e. they also disagree with regard to who bears responsibility for accidents. And they will explain. As one sage, the first Tana holds, a loan stands in the possession of the debtor. Right? If I lend you $100, why did I lend you $100? Right? Now, sometimes, like when a bank lends you money, they're not lending you money just so you have money in your pocket. They're lending you money so that you can open a business or so that you can buy a house. And then when you get the money, if you use it for some other purpose, you're going to violate the contract that you had with the bank. But that's with the bank where it was a written contract. A more typical case where I'm lending my friend $100 because he asked me, can I borrow $100, right? I'm not in control of what he does with the $100. But what they're now going to argue about is, well, I give him the $100 and let's say he hasn't spent it. And then my circumstances change and I was like, you know what? Listen, that $100 that I lent to you, have you spent it? No, I haven't. You got to give it back to me. I need it right now. I can't have that loan outstanding. I need the 100. Right? Can I demand it back? Maybe when he borrowed it, he says, can you lend me $100 today and I'll pay you back next Monday? So what if before next Monday I say, you know what, did you spend it? No, I didn't. Give it back. I need it really badly. Can I ask for it back before it is due, before the period of that loan was due? Let's see. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said the name of Rabbi Meir. A loan is like a deposit. And the Gemara asks, with regard to what did they disagree? Rabbah said, I found the scholars in the study hall of Rav who were sitting and saying they disagree with regard to the issue of whether a loan the debtor has not yet begun to spend is in the possession of the owner, the lender, with regard to the possibility of retracting the loan. And the same is true, i.e. they also disagree with regard to who bears responsibility for accidents. Right, if the borrower has now it's Monday, right? It's the regular loan. I'm lending you $100, pay it back to me next Monday. Okay, next Monday comes, and the borrower comes with the $100 in his hand. But before he gives it back to me in my hand, a huge gust of wind comes and blows it out of his hand, and it's gone. Who bears the loss? He came on Monday, he was ready to pay it back, but before he was able to put it in my hand, there was an accident, unforeseeable. Who bears the loss? The debtor. Because until he pays me back, right, he's responsible for paying back the loan, and he never paid it back to me. Maybe he should have been more careful for that unforeseeable gust of wind. But not everyone agrees. Now, one sage, the first Tana holds, a loan stands in the possession of the debtor, i.e., even if it has not been spent, the lender cannot demand return of the money before it was due. And the same is true with regard to responsibility for accidents, i.e., if the money is lost, it is considered lost from the debtor's possession, and he bears responsibility for it. And the other sage, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, holds a loan that the debtor has not yet begun to spend actually stands in the possession of the owner. And the same is true with regard to responsibility for accidents. So he can therefore betroth the woman, and tying this back to betrothal, he can therefore betroth the woman with the money that he already lent her, provided that she has not yet begun to spend it, right? According to this view, if he lent the woman money and she hasn't spent it, like she still got it. Since he has the possibility, the lender has the possibility of reclaiming the loan, it's like it's still his. And therefore, even though he lent it to her, he can use it to betroth her by saying, I forgive the loan. You don't have to pay me back. The other sage says, no, as soon as you lend it to somebody, the debtor is fully responsible for that money. It's his money to use as the way he wants to use it. If he loses it, he bears the loss. And therefore, the lender cannot be said to possess that money after it's been given to the borrower, and therefore you can't create betrothal by forgiving that loan. Rabbah continues, and I said to them, with regard to accidents, okay, everyone agrees that it stands in the possession of the debtor, and it's the borrower who is responsible for the money. And what is the reason? A loan of money is no worse than borrowing an item. And just as in the case of borrowing an item, whereby the item is returned to its owner intact, and yet the debtor is liable for accidents that happen while the borrower is using it, as explicitly stated in the Torah, if you borrow something and it breaks, you are responsible to pay for the damage to the person who lent it to you. And the Torah says that. And is it not all the more so with regard to a loan, which the debtor spends and repays with other money? It should be considered in the debtor's possession, and he should bear responsibility for it in case of accidents. And that's why, once the loan goes out to the woman, in the case of a man lends a woman money, he can't say that money's really mine and I betroth you with it, because it's fully in her possession until she pays it back. So rather here, the practical difference between them concerns the question of a loan in the possession of the owner, and with regard to the possibility of retraction of the loan. The first Tana is of the opinion that he cannot retract the loan, whereas Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar holds that one can do so, right? So in this case of a lender and a borrower, everyone agrees that once the money's in the borrower's possession, anything that happens to that money, the borrower bears the loss. But if the lender gives money to the borrower and the borrower hasn't spent it yet, can the lender, before the loan is due, come and say, give me back the money? You haven't spent it yet? Great, give it back. Can he make that demand? Seems that the sages disagree about that. So the Gemara asks, but rather with regard to that which Rav Huna says, in the case of one who borrows an axe from his friend for a certain period of time, if he chops wood with it, so he has acquired it in the sense that the lender cannot demand its immediate return. But if he has not chopped wood with it, then the borrower has not acquired it. So let us say that this law that Rav Huna stated is parallel to a dispute between Tanaim. According to the explanation of Rabbah, it would be a dispute between the first Tana and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Seems like, in this case of the axe for chopping wood, if I lend you the axe, because you say I need the axe until Tuesday, I'm going to chop a bunch of trees with it, but you're lazy and you just put the axe down and you didn't get to the chopping yet, and then I come over and say, have you started chopping wood? No, I've not. Well, you know what? Since you're not using it, I need the axe back. And he says, well, I said I would give it back to you next Tuesday. I just haven't started chopping yet. Well, go borrow somebody else's axe. I want it back. Sounds like one view, yes, I can ask for the axe back because it's my axe and you haven't started using it. And the other view, it says, doesn't matter. Once you lent it to me, it's for a period of time. But all would agree that after it's lent to him and he starts using it, then I can't ask for it back until Tuesday. But the Gemara rejects this suggestion that these disputes are the same dispute. No. The sages of these Mishnas and Baraisas disagree only with regard to a loan, because it is not returned intact, right? I can borrow, 100 dinars from you, and I owe you 100 dinars, but I don't have to return the same coins that I borrowed from you. I can replace them with other coins. Since there is no need for the debtor to return the same money to the lender, this means that the money has been transferred to the debtor's domain, and the first Tana holds that the lender may not retract the loan. But with regard to borrowing an item, like an axe, for example, which is returned intact, the very same item, everyone agrees that if one chopped wood with it, yes, he has acquired it and is responsible for it, and if he has not chopped with it, he has not acquired it. So the Gemara suggests, let us say that Rav's statement that one cannot betroth a woman with a loan is subject to a dispute between Tanaim, and the Baraisa states, the Baraisa teaches, if one says to a woman, be betrothed to me with a promissory note, or if he had a loan in the possession of others and he authorized her to collect the money for herself. So Rabbi Meir says she is betrothed, and the rabbis, the majority, say she is not betrothed. Okay, now what we're doing is sort of creating a security, like a bond, right? In other words, if I have a promissory note, what's that? I lend $100 to my friend Tom. Tom took the $100 and he gave me a promissory note, right? The note says Tom owes me $100. This piece of paper is basically worth $100. It says Tom owes me $100. Can I sell the promissory note? Yes, there are requirements of what I need to do in order to sell it, But this is creating a security, right? In this case, a debt instrument, a bond. It's like a bond, right? This promissory note has value on it by itself. What I could do is, let's say, I don't know when Tom's going to pay me back. And Bill over here, I'm leaving town. I'd like to get some cash now. I can't wait for Tom to pay me back. So Bill says, I'll tell you what. I know Tom is good for it. I'll give you $90 for the note. You've got some cash in your pocket. You can leave town. And I'll wait for Tom to pay back the promissory note. And I'll make $10 for my trouble, right? Because he's getting a note worth $100 for only $90. I'll take the deal because I want cash in my pocket now. So the promissory note itself has value in the sense that it represents the loan. It represents the right to receive $100 from Tom. Can I use that promissory note to betroth Betty, right? Can I use the promissory note to betroth? Sounds like, why not, right? It's worth money, but it's not money in hand. It's not money in hand. Or, similarly, there is no promissory note, but Tom owes me $100. I say to her, listen, I'm going to betroth you with the $100 loan. I'm not going to collect it from Tom. I'm giving you the right to go collect from Tom anytime you want, even without a promissory note. Does this betrothal work? That's what we're asking. So there's a brisa that teaches, if one says to a woman, be betrothed to me with a promissory note, or if he had a loan in the possession of others and he authorized her to collect the money for herself, Rabbi Meir says, yes, this is betrothal. But the majority who disagree with Rabbi Meir say, no, this is not a betrothal. And the Gemara clarifies what are the circumstances of the promissory note. Let's handle the promissory note first. If we say it is a promissory note of others who owe me money, like the case I met, right? Tom owes me money. That's represented by this promissory note. Can I use that promissory note to betroth her? So if we say the promissory note of others who owe him money, so this is the same as a loan in the possession of others. Why would the Baraisa state it twice? I mean, in one case there is a note, in the other case there isn't, but the money is the same. But maybe what we mean by a promissory note is something different. Maybe what we mean by a promissory note is that I'm going to give her a promissory note, meaning I owe her the money. Maybe that's what they mean. So rather, is it not referring to her promissory note, i.e. a loan she has taken from him? In other words, earlier she gave me a promissory note when I lent her $100. Can I now use the promissory note to betroth her? We already said, well, wait a minute, we can't betroth her by just forgiving the loan. Is it different if she issued me a promissory note and now I give her the promissory note in order to create betrothal? Does that make a difference? Rather, is it not referring to her promissory note, i.e. a loan that she has taken from him? And the sages disagree, Rabbi Meir and the majority disagree with regard to one who betroths a woman with a loan, whether forgiving the debt by returning the promissory note counts as betrothal money or not. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. No, that's not what we mean by promissory note. Actually, the Bryce is referring to a promissory note of others. I lent Tom $100. He gave me a promissory note. And here, Rabbi Meir and the sages disagree in two cases. In the case of a loan with a promissory note, in the case of a loan by oral agreement, the way I first put it. So the Gemara explains, with regard to a loan with a note, concerning what do they disagree? They disagree concerning the dispute of Rebbe and the rabbis. As it is taught in a Baraisa, letters, i.e. the content of a promissory note, are acquired by merely transferring the document. If the lender hands over a promissory note to a third party, the latter can collect the debt. This is the statement of Rebbe. And the rabbis say, the majority disagree with and overrule Rebbe, and the rabbis say whether one wrote a document of sale for the promissory note but did not transfer the note itself, or whether he transferred the promissory note but did not write a document of sale for it, the recipient has not acquired the promissory note. The recipient acquires it only once the other writes a document of sale and transfers the note, right? I lent Tom $100. Tom gives me a promissory note. I want to sell the note to Bill. Can I do that? Yes, but what are the requirements of this exchange with Bill? I'm going to give him the promissory note. I have to hand it to him. And we have to write a document of sale for the promissory note that I'm handing to him, right? There has to be both the transfer, the physical transfer of the promissory note, and another document which testifies to the fact that I have transferred this note to Bill. Otherwise, transferring a promissory note does not work, sort of like the SEC, right? Requirements of this kind of purchase and sale. So the suggestion is that one sage, Rabbi Meir, is of the opinion that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe, and therefore one can betroth a woman by giving her a promissory note even without writing a document of sale for it. And the other sage, meaning the rabbis who disagree with Rebbe, is not of the opinion that the law is, the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Meir, is not of the opinion that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe, and she is not betrothed because she has not received anything at all since there wasn't the full transfer of the note with a document of sale. I know it's hard. You're doing great if you're following this. I only have one paragraph to go. If you got questions or comments, get them in now. And if you wish, say instead the following answer. No one is of the opinion that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rebbe. And here, what they disagree about is with regard to the statement of Rav Papa. As Rav Papa says, this one who sells a promissory note to his friend must write the following formula for him. Let it be acquired by you, it and all its liens. Otherwise, the debt discussed in the promissory note has not been transferred. And one sage, meaning the rabbis, is of the opinion that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Papa, and the other sage, Rabbi Meir, is not of the opinion that the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Papa. He holds that debt is acquired even if one did not write this phrase, and therefore a man can betroth a woman by giving a promissory note to her. What are the requirements of transferring a promissory note? Were they met? In that case, we can betroth with it. And if the requirements were not met, then we cannot betroth with it. So, the law came out that you can't betroth a woman by forgiving a loan. But if you're handing her even her own promissory note, which is like forgiving a loan, it still might work because the document itself has value. You're handing her something. If the requirements of transferring a promissory note haven't been met, then even though you handed her the paper, maybe you really didn't hand her anything because it's an incomplete transfer, and that discussion will continue. Not tomorrow, Motzi Shabbos, because we have the first 2 days of Sukkot, tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. So we'll have our next class Sunday night at the end of the first 2 days of Sukkot, which is a full holiday. We'll be entering Chol HaMoed Sukkot, the intermediate days of Sukkot, but we can teach a class on those days. The general law is you can work on the intermediate days, but only to prevent a significant financial loss. Otherwise, it's better to take those days off. That's the general law. There's a lot of nuance to that. If you have questions about whether you can work and what kinds of work you can do Chol HaMoed, Google it, ask your rabbi, etc. Do a little more research on that. But at any rate, we will teach our class. We will have this class Sunday night, after nightfall. Probably try to get on the air about 8:30, 8:45 Sunday night. Okay. Couple questions. Tom says, so is the Yisrael punished for the Cohen's error? Okay, so that's talking about when the Cohen made an error with regard to pigul, that he had a faulty intention that disqualified the offering. So what Tom is asking, okay, well, the Yisrael, right, the regular Jew who brought the offering to the temple when the temple is standing, maybe it cost a lot of money. Maybe it was very difficult for him to buy, let's say, a goat and bring it all the way to Jerusalem and to the temple and hand it over to the Cohen. And then the Cohen disqualifies the offering because he had a faulty intention. Who bears the loss for that animal? Does he have to, and it was, in other words, it was a sin offering, right? So he needs to be absolved of the sin for which he brought the sin offering. Now that that offering has been disqualified, what happens to the guy who brought the offering? Does he need to bring another offering? Does the Cohen replace the offering? Is it enough that the guy, brought the offering to the temple and then the Cohen messed it up? What happens? Great question, Tom. I can't remember the answer. I'm sorry, I don't know offhand, but it's a great question. Sharon, so intention must be at the time of the transaction, not a determination made later. What if there is a change of heart on the part of the lender? So we've asked so many borrower-lender questions. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but if it's this idea that, I'm lending you money, or the borrower is borrowing money for a purpose, and what if he changes his mind? Does that mean that he can't keep the loan? Can he use it for something else? But the basic idea is, no, when you borrow money, you can do whatever you want with it. And why that's relevant here is, okay, well, on the one hand, if the betrothal was an agreed upon sum, and the man has only given her some of that betrothal money, then he could change his mind right before he hands over the rest of the money, in which case this was a loan to her, right? And she has to return all that money. What if she used the money and she doesn't have it? Well, she's going to have to get it because he had the right to change his mind until all the betrothal money was paid. If it's a different case where, he lent her money and he's trying to just forgive the loan to create betrothal, we see that doesn't work. Promissory note might change it. If we're just talking about loans in general, can I lend you money and then, before it was due, ask for it back? I mean, we talked about that, so I'm not quite sure what that specific question is. I'm going to keep going. Guy, is the money fungible? Yes. Or must the same coin's bills be returned? No. Why then are the dates not fungible? Eat one date, then replace it with another. Excellent question. That would work if there are other dates lying around, or if she can get dates. Maybe she can't. But it's a great question. If the money's fungible, why aren't the dates fungible? I like it. Tom, did the laws of betrothal continue to be observed after the destruction of the Second Temple? Yes. Yes, we were only borrowing, in terms of this laws of pigul from the law of offerings, to talk about, when somebody makes multiple statements, do we assume that they are joined by and or? But there's no reason why the idea of betrothal ended when the temple ended. And as a matter of fact, no, it went on for a long time afterward. And even today, we do have betrothal. The difference is that normally at a Jewish wedding, we do the betrothal and the chuppah on the same day. Right? But you say, mikudeshet li, right? Be betrothed to me, right? Under the laws of Moses. And then they stand under the chuppah, and then they sort of finalize the marriage. So now it's just become very standard that they do Kiddushin, betrothal, and nisuin or chuppah, full marriage on the same day. But I think I don't know when that became the case, but certainly 1,000 years after the temple was destroyed, they were doing betrothal kind of in the more traditional way, where it could be quite a long time in advance, and if it was broken off, would require a get to undo it. As far as I know, if somebody knows different, let me know. But that's what I recall. I'm not a rabbi, but that's what I recall. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, we'll be together again Sunday night after first days of Sukkot and nightfall in LA. So we'll try to get on the air by about 8:40 p.m. on Sunday night. Good Shabbos, Chag Sameach.